Support for Arkansas Week provided by the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, the Arkansas Times, and KUAR FM 89.
Hello again, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us. A new state law opens the door to a new approach for delivering urgently needed psychiatric care and other mental health services in Arkansas, and that includes counseling for substance abuse. Clinicians predict it could produce dramatic results with much less red tape and at far less expense. That's in a moment. First, a crisis averted, a debt ceiling lifted, financial markets reassured for the moment. All four Arkansas congressmen voted for the package approved a couple of nights ago. Our two senators were divided. So some thoughts on that showdown and a couple of other issues now from some familiar faces. Bill Vickery on the right, Michael Cook from the left. If you don't know him, you'll figure it out pretty quickly. Gents, as always, thanks for coming aboard.
Yeah.
Well, what do we make?
you.
All four of our House delegates, all four Republicans, went with the leadership. The Freedom Caucus itself was splintered. What do we make of all this? On the House side, let's start there.
Well,
Bill?
if I can, I'll just look. I think it is a little bit of, and I don't want to be too optimistic here, but I think it's a little bit of a wedge for things going forward. In that you did have a significant bipartisan engagement here from both sides. You had, to some degree, you had some theater from the extremes. Again, I think in both parties. On the outskirts, but that core, that big middle, I think we have. This could be the beginning of what can really be a government that coalesces together around issues. Now, you know, gun to our head on this one. I mean, you had to do it. I mean, there's just no way. The catastrophe that would be associated with it doesn't just affect Wall Street bankers. It works its way down all the way to folks in nursing homes here in Arkansas. So it had to be done, but you know, it's a reason for optimism, I think.
You're thinking maybe a move to the center?
It is interesting to watch Hakeem Jeffries and Kevin McCarthy work together. They never dialed the rhetoric up against one another, and these things tend to lend themselves to a lot of heavy-duty rhetoric, and it's possible. It's possible that we could see some real cooperation now.
He's really qualifying it there, Michael.
Well, I agree and I don't agree with what Bill had to say. First, I do agree. I was happy as everybody that both Joe Biden and Kevin McCarthy got together, went into rooms together and cut a deal that not everybody's happy with either side. That's the art of a deal where not everybody's 100% happy, but you got the job done. So it's a benefit to both Biden and Kevin McCarthy, who I have to give him some credit here. But I don't agree that this is a new way of doing things in D.C. I'm not that optimistic. Here, everybody had to come together because they knew if we didn't, the economy would tank. Trillions of dollars would be lost in value, like Bill was saying, on down to the little guy at the lowest level. So they had to, on this one issue, come together. But I still think we're still, the tribalism, the partisanship will continue soon after this deal is signed by President Biden.
Well, as we noted up top, there was division, and our two senators, Mr. Bozeman, went with the majority, and the leadership, Mr. McConnell and Senator Cotton, went the other way. Bill, what do we make of that?
Well, I think some of that's insider stuff in Washington. To some degree, I think you had Cotton and a group of people trying to make a point in with McConnell. The Senate stuff is a lot more of this sort of true insider baseball. It's a completely different animal over on the Senate side than on the House side. I think if there had been genuine peril to the deal, I think you would have seen a different outcome. But I think they knew they had it.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I was going to say the fact that because it passed overwhelmingly, Tom Cotton was able to do a straight vote because he knew it wouldn't. Nobody got mad at him because it was going to pass, so he gets to go on TV and rail against it and get some publicity. And at the end of the day, like Bill said, it's inside baseball that doesn't really affect anything.
Well, are you two guys in agreement then on this bipartisan solution here that Mr. Cotton is in fact burnishing his bona fides in some way here?
Oh, he's always trying to do that. That's not a weird thing or a unique thing. He's always trying to get himself on Fox News and get more national exposure.
Well, now that's awfully cynical, but Bill
Well,
Vickery.
I will say this. We do have on the Republican side, we do have an embarrassment of riches in terms of people who hail from the natural state here, who who have some degree of a national profile, some bigger than others developing, others, I mean, I think it's no coincidence. I mean, look, it's not a mistake that you see a lot of folks moving to the fore as we get to a presidential year. And we're not that far away. It's shocking that we stay here, you know, early June, and we're talking about the 24 election cycle. But yeah, that's the truth.
Well, it's not really shocking, is it?
Yeah,
I mean,
true.
True. The White House is saying, with some justification, here is another, quote, another bipartisan victory for Mr. Biden. Yeah. He's doing what he was elected to do, what the country expected of it.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I think Biden has done a fantastic job. He's gotten things done. He got this done. He's gotten some other great legislation, such as the transportation infrastructure. He's been able to, because he's been there for so long. That's the benefit of his experience of being able to get the job done. He's not worried about cut a deal. He's not worrying about crowing on, you know, like when this debt ceiling came out, he was real calm about it. He was not trying to, go to the tops of the buildings and scream, I did the best deal ever. Just get the job done. That's what people elected him to do, and he's showing time and time again that he gets the job done. That's
Bill, your thoughts on that, and any impact at all on next year, this debt?
No, I promise you, there's a cadre of people in Washington and throughout many states in this country that are begging for the Democratic Party to nominate Joe Biden once again. I'm not sure the guy can stay awake all the way through November of next year. I still contend that he won't necessarily make it to the starting gate and that you'll see some sort of maneuver, a pivot. Because you got to remember, this is a guy that never really won a primary and became the Democratic nominee. Because COVID came in, they shut down. Once Obama anointed him, they cleared the field. And so, he's at his age. And listen, I don't take any comfort in saying this, but there's some serious physical health issues and mental issues that are there. I think all those are exploited in a real campaign, and he's going to have to run.
I can't stop him.
And yet he just got this great deal cut. I mean, it's funny how Republicans on the one hand said, he can barely craft two sentences together, but yet he's able to do all these things and get the job done. And
if you believe he had any notion.
It's funny how you have to do one or the bipartisan doing,
he's calling out members of Congress that have been dead for a year in his speeches.
He's done a fantastic job in this latest bipartisan deal. Another example of bipartisanship that he's been able to get done is, it'll be a tough race because don't forget, you have Trump in the wings there. That's the absolute worst person that the Republicans are going to nominate, and it looks like he will probably be the nominee for Republicans come 2024.
Little Rocky, if we can. A couple of things here. The governor, now in her sixth month in office, is sending the guard to the border with an open slap against the president.
Yeah, Sarah Sanders, it's all about raising our national profile. The most dangerous place to be in Arkansas is between Sarah Sanders and a Fox News TV camera, because she will run you over to get in front of Fox News. Sending 80 troops to the border is not going to make a difference, but it gets her on Fox News, Newsmax, ONN, all about raising our national profile because she's trying to either get the VP slot for 2024 or get on the short list. So her whole administration for a while now has been stunts trying to get more publicity. Another latest example of her trying to raise her profile.
Vickery is fidgeting.
Yeah. Okay. So let's be clear. If this were a tornado or a hurricane and we sent troops down to assist in that, it would be hailed. It would be the right thing to do. We would talk about how we all share the burden here in the United States. There is a real human crisis that has occurred for now almost 2 decades at the southern border. It's very clear. There's also a definite policy crisis that is occurring relative to immigration. And let's be very blunt here. Mexico is a narco state. There's no doubt about that. They are run by a series of drug trafficking families. They don't stop these people at the southern border because guess what they are? They are dollar signs to these drug traffickers because they move them across the border the same way they do their product, and they make money off of them. And the human toll that occurs at the southern border, primarily in Texas and to a degree in New Mexico, is a real tragedy. You have a federal administration that has paid no attention to this because it doesn't help them with their base. It's not impacting the Upper West Side of Manhattan or Brentwood or the Gold Coast in Chicago. This is a major, big-time issue. I do applaud her for engaging in the issue. This is a national issue. I like when Governor Governor Abbott or Governor DeSantis send some of these folks to other places, and we're all Americans. We should share in this. We should share in this burden in terms of dealing with this. So it's a major, major issue, and it's something. Look, it's something she did the right thing. And I think showing some leadership to a degree, not what's coming out of Washington.
Is this policy or politics?
It's politics. It's all about theater. I mean, yes, there's big problems at the border, but 80 troops over thousands of the border between U.S. and Mexico. It's not going to make a difference. It's about getting more publicity, getting herself on Fox News. That's what it's all about.
I'll agree. Seconds remaining, Bill.
I'll agree. There should be 10,000 United States Marines on the border at a minimum right now to deal with the crisis. That stops it.
Got to end it there because we're out of time. Gents, as always, thanks for being here, and you'll be back soon.
Definitely.
Thank you.
And so will we. Just a moment. In recent months, one after another, surveys, studies that underscore a pressing need for expanding mental health services, including treatment for substance abuse or addiction. And beyond that, a need to make those clinical services more easily accessible. A new state law embraces what is called collaborative care management. It's intended to deliver psychiatric or counseling treatment faster, more efficiently, and at less cost by integrating or incorporating those services at the primary care level. And it mandates reimbursement for those services by private carriers. Now, with more on that program, joining us, co-sponsor of the law, primary sponsor, Senator Kim Hammer of Benton, Dr. Patty Gibson, president of the Arkansas Psychiatric Society, and Dr. Tisha Deen of the UAMS Department of Psychiatry and director of its Behavioral Health Integration Program. We thank all of you. Senator, let me begin with you. What was the impetus for the bill? What moved this onto the calendar?
I think the recognition that in society today that we have an increasing number of individuals that would benefit from additional or at least identified need of mental health services. And one of the things that we realized from this with the help of these ladies, these doctors here, is that if we can catch somebody at a primary care level, that we would actually see savings to the cost, but greater than that, we'd have an improved quality of life for individuals by having something like this bill that would allow for primary care physicians to be recognized or to recognize the need for mental health services.
Are they going to be compensated, though, Senator? So explain where the savings are coming from. Why is this going to cost less?
Because from experience and from other studies that have been done by other programs in other states, we recognize that if we can have somebody identified earlier that has a need for mental health services, and we can get that initiated sooner than later, then what we would see is a reduction in maybe the increase of medicines, or in worst case scenario, inpatient psychiatric facilities that cost an astronomical amount of money. But it's hard to put a cost on quality of life also. And if we have people that are mentally in good treatment, then other parts of their life, such as physical, spiritual, other areas of their life are also improved, and that contributes to the overall savings.
Doctor, there would seem to be a practical advantage in capturing, if you will, or diagnosing these ills at the primary care level, I'd say at a general practitioner's office. I'm assuming that's a big part of the motivation here.
Yes, for sure.
The strategy of it.
Yeah, and we know I'm a rural Arkansan. I grew up in rural northeast Arkansas, and you know, a lot of times things get caught and we see things at a primary care level, and then people are able to get support there in a place where they feel comfortable, in a place where they don't feel stigmatized, and it also it builds on that existing relationship that people have with their primary care providers.
Are we equipped in terms of psychologists, psychiatrists, the clinical community that would deal with this? Are we ready to handle this caseload?
Well, one of the beautiful...
It's a good problem to have,
yeah.
I assume, but... Yeah.
Yes, we always have a job.
Right.
One of the beautiful things about collaborative care management is that it really stretches our resources. It puts the psychiatrist or the psychiatric provider at a consultant level. So the primary care provider still manages and is in control of the patient's care, but they get access to an additional team member. So that means that person, the psychiatrist, is able to manage a much larger patient load and able to help the primary care physician to manage them. So we take the resources that we have and we make them more efficient.
Right. So this is kind of a referral situation, or one model of it anyway, would amount to a referral situation from the primary care or an expanded.
What it really does is it brings a mental health team into the primary care setting. So it's team-based care and it's whole person care. So instead of having you go to the one office to get your physical health taken care of and then having to go to a separate building, separate office with separate insurance to get your mental health care, it brings the team into primary care. So actually, the primary care doctor, and this could be a family doc, pediatrician, OBGYN, they actually would have a care manager who's either in their office or available virtually fairly immediately within the next 24 to 48 hours. The care manager could talk to the patient, get an assessment, and then that care manager meets with the psychiatrist as a consultant. And then the psychiatrist gives feedback to the primary care doctor. So it brings the team so that the patients get all their care in primary care. And although the primary care doctor continues to prescribe the meds under the guidance of the psychiatrist, and then the care manager continues to follow up. So patients may continue follow-up as needed, weekly, monthly, over several months until they are better.
The senator mentioned this, that there is, as did your colleague, is it growing? Is this a result of COVID, but the demand for psychological or psychiatric services seems to be exponentially larger than it was only 5 years ago?
Well, the interesting thing is, yes, if you look at the statistics, they're all higher in terms of suicides, more depression, anxiety, more overdoses. But a lot of what the pandemic has done is just reveal how bad the care in the system and how much need there was already.
Bad or gaps?
Gaps. Okay. So there's been so much, there's been a high level of mental health need even before the pandemic. But there's never been enough mental health providers, psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists. And even back 5 years ago, if a family doc referred a patient to the psychiatrist, 6 out of 10 did not go. So the family doc was left taking care of them, and actually 6 of them never got any treatment. So the family doc's treating them on their own.
What's been the block there? The stigma that was mentioned earlier, or the availability of care, or
the stigma and the lack of. I think I read recently there's only 500 psychiatrists in the state of Arkansas, and maybe a total of 5,000 mental health providers. Right now, like if Senator Hammer came to me and said, "Hey, as a friend, I'm a senator, you're a psychiatrist, can you get me an appointment?" It would still take me probably 2 to 4 weeks to get him an appointment. And he's going to have good insurance, but there's just not enough providers out there. And then if you start looking at the whole rural state and people that don't have the insurance that's needed, so we'll never be able to see enough. But what this does is bring the mental health team, psychiatrist, care manager, therapy, with the primary care doctor who can provide whole care to the patient.
This is going to be, there's an expense attached to this, Senator.
There is, but the one thing we found that was interesting was that all the private carriers, there was no resistance on the part of the private carriers because some of them were already covering these services.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Blue Cross has embraced this, has it not? And it's one of the larger carriers in the state.
Yes, because they recognize, in fact, we used one of their cost studies in order to justify why we wanted to do this. Because they realize from their own studies, internally and externally, that it actually creates savings to the system. So you got improvement of quality of life. You've got professionals in the medical field, psychology field, all working together, and everyone is being reimbursed appropriately, or to a benefit. So it's not what would I say? It's not a reason not to see somebody. And so one of the things we realized from the studies was that it actually created savings. And we hope eventually that Medicaid will realize that it's also a cost savings, and that as time passes on and they realize that we would be able to get individuals covered through the Medicaid program also.
In fact, you had hoped to include Medicaid in this new statute.
We did.
Right.
We did. But
you're having conversations with it. Do those conversations continue with the Medicaid
conversations are continuing, and we recognize that in the time that we live, that we want to be careful with the budget, but also we realize that if the private carriers have caught on that it is a savings and they are implementing it, then why would we not also include that in our Medicaid services so that we can see the same results in the Medicaid population?
Let me go to Dr. Deen again to follow up on what your colleague and I were discussing earlier, and that's the demand for services, the level of disorders or complaints that you were seeing. Are you seeing this as a practitioner, you and your colleagues?
Oh, yes.
Whether it's anxiety, suicidal tendencies?
Yes, and I think, again, like Dr. Gibson alluded to, I mean, the studies do show that there's higher numbers than there were, so I don't think that we can say there's not more, but I also think that we are recognizing it more and we're talking about it more. One of the great things about collaborative care that I think helps some of this need and kind of demand for services is that there's a knowledge transfer. So I, as a psychologist, am working side by side with physicians and residents at UAMS. We do training in this model with our residents. And so they get the knowledge that I have. I teach them about mental health and I teach them how to manage things, and the psychiatrist teaches them too. And so there's actually less need for specialty mental health. For people who have higher acuity, that's great, and there's always going to be those, but we can manage a lot of patients in primary care if we're fully equipped, and that will decrease some of that demand on our more specialty services.
Is this a mission that the practitioners, the OBGYNs, the GPs, is this a mission that what's been the feedback from them so far, Doc?
What they'll say is they see so many patients a day that have mental health issues, either recognize that they walk in and say, I need help with depression, or the doctor recognizes that actually the blood pressure's high, the diabetes is out of control, the sleep is bad, and actually it's related to anxiety and depression. And so they struggle trying to take care of these patients because they don't have the full knowledge, time, and experience. And so that's the advantage of bringing alongside specialists to work with them.
Dr. Deen?
Yeah, getting to the knowledge transfer, they learn and we can treat people within primary care. And we're also able to help teach people and do preventative care. And so we're talking about catching people earlier. We can help educate people about things to look for, stressors, learn how to manage stress so that they don't get to a place where they are needing to go to the emergency room. And so that again is where the cost savings goes in, because people are using less services.
All right, Senator, we've got the last few seconds left if you want them.
Always glad to take the last few seconds. Thank you.
You would close for your bill if you would.
I would close for my bill, yes. And I want to express my appreciation to the two doctors here and everybody that came together to make this possible. I think as time goes on, now that we have this in place, that we will see the realized savings from the decreased visits to the ER, the inpatient treatment centers, and just really a removal of the stigma that will create people to feel free to seek out help from their primary care physician, who for the most part is who people are seeing at the front end. So why would we not include them in the circle in order to give people what they need help with?
Got to end it there. Senator, doctors, thank you both, all of you, very much for coming in. Come back soon.
Thank you.
And we'll be back. We conclude the broadcast on a somber note, the passing of a friend and colleague. A man who enlivened and enriched each of the many editions of this broadcast on which he appeared over the many years. He wore many hats, Hoyt Purvis, and these were but a few. Journalist, assistant to Senators J. William Fulbright of Arkansas, Robert Byrd of West Virginia, world traveler, more than 100 countries, sports fan who believed baseball was a gift from the gods, an educator and an administrator, at first at the University of Texas and then for 34 years at the University of Arkansas. Hoyt was an author and constant scholar, a presidential appointee, a mentor to countless students, and an inspiration to all who knew him. He was Mary's husband, the father of Pamela and Camille, and the grandfather of their children. And he was a friend. See you next week.
Support for Arkansas Week provided by the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, the Arkansas Times, and KUAR FM 89.